What if I told you that within the silence of your own voice lies the ability to reorder reality itself? This isn't the claim of mysticism, but a hypothesis increasingly echoed in both ancient philosophy and modern neuroscience. Imagine your mind as a field and your thoughts as seeds. What you plant repeatedly, deliberately, and with feeling becomes not just an inner narrative, but the blueprint your nervous system follows to interpret and shape the world around you. This is not merely metaphor, it is mechanism. At the age of 65 and beyond, many are taught to think in terms of slowing down, of resigning from active creation. But what if this stage of life is, in fact, the most fertile ground for transformation? You have lived. You have gathered decades of sensory experience, emotional intelligence, and memory. And now, science tells us the brain's plasticity, the ability to reshape itself, is not lost with age. In fact, with intentional practice, the aging brain becomes more selective, more efficient, more powerful in directing focus and embedding lasting beliefs. According to a 2017 study published in Nature Human Behavior, older adults demonstrated enhanced abilities in directed attention and pattern recognition, which means you are uniquely positioned to wield repetition and visualization more effectively than many younger minds. Repetition is not redundancy. In cognitive neuroscience, repetition is the foundation of what's known as Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you repeat a phrase like, "I am whole," "I am loved," or "abundance flows to me," with emotional engagement, you're not just saying words, you are lighting up specific neural circuits. And with every round, those circuits grow stronger, more automatic, more dominant. Over time, the brain begins to interpret these affirmations not as fiction, but as default reality. This is the very principle behind cognitive behavioral therapy, a practice endorsed by the American Psychological Association and used widely to recondition thought patterns in everything from depression to chronic pain management. Let's ground this in an image. Picture a fresh snowfall in the woods. The first time you walk across it, your footprints are shallow, uncertain. But the more you take that path, the deeper and clearer it becomes. Eventually, it's the path others follow. That is how your subconscious works. Speak a phrase once, and it fades. Speak it 100 times with conviction, and it becomes the main road your mind travels. It becomes identity. Neville Goddard called this assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In today's terms, we might describe it as aligning our internal state with the outcome we desire, so thoroughly that the nervous system can no longer tell the difference. Brain imaging studies at Harvard and Stanford have shown that vividly imagining a scenario such as being healthy, walking pain-free, or receiving love activates nearly identical regions of the brain as physically experiencing it. The implications are profound. You do not need external proof to begin embodying a new state. You need internal repetition, belief, and sensory engagement. So what can you do today? Choose one phrase that resonates, not a lofty one that feels out of reach, but something real enough to stir your soul. It might be, "Each day my body restores itself," or "Peace flows through me like a river." Speak it out loud, not once, but 100 times. Do it slowly. Let the words soak into your bones. Say it in the morning, before the world distracts you. Say it again before sleep, when your brain is in theta state and most receptive to suggestion. Do this for 7 nights. This is not a ritual of hope, it is a neurological intervention, a rewiring of perception, a vote of confidence for the life you are willing to believe into being. Remember, it is not about effort. It is about certainty, about persistence, about speaking the truth of your chosen future until your body and mind cannot distinguish it from memory. The universe rearranges itself not for those who wait, but for those who assume. If repetition is the soil, then presence is the sun that brings your intention to life. Saying a phrase 100 times is not a mechanical act. It is a sacred return, each time deeper, each time more alive. And this is where most people falter. They speak the words but remain elsewhere in thought, in distraction, in doubt. But if you, in this very season of life, can bring your full awareness to the moment, you unlock a cognitive and spiritual power that the young rarely appreciate. You see, the frontal lobe of the human brain, responsible for focus, introspection, and meaning-making, becomes more refined with age. In older adults, studies from the University of California, Berkeley, have shown a reduced susceptibility to emotional volatility and improved executive function under guided repetition. What this means is simple yet profound. You have the perfect brain for devotion, for mindful practice, for soaking meaning into your inner world. Let me give you an image. Picture a bell ringing in an open field. If you strike it once and walk away, the sound vanishes quickly. But if you strike it repeatedly with rhythm and focus, the air begins to carry a resonance that lingers. Soon, even after you stop, the field still sings. That is what your mind does when you speak your phrase with unwavering attention. Repetition alone creates a rhythm, but repetition with presence creates resonance. This is no mere poetic idea. Neuroimaging studies show that mindful repetition, what psychologists call focused affirmational rehearsal, increases activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, the region associated with self-perception and long-term identity formation. When you speak a phrase as though it were already true, and you do so with presence, your brain begins to integrate that identity into its default mode. Over time, you don't just think differently, you become different. There's a timeless wisdom echoed across philosophical traditions. Where your attention goes, energy flows. In Taoist practice, it is called intentional breath. In Christian mysticism, contemplative prayer. In cognitive science, it is the attentional spotlight. But regardless of the language, the lesson remains. When you bring your full self to a moment, that moment begins to shape you. So when you say your phrase, be it, "I am healing," or "I am secure and safe," say it as if you were standing in front of the mirror of your soul. Let the tone of your voice carry the authority of someone who knows, not someone who is trying to believe. Speak slowly. Pause between repetitions. Listen to how the words land inside your body. If they feel dull or distant, breathe deeper, shift your posture, speak them again with more truth. Let them not pass through your lips like routine, but press into your bones like intention. Feel it. Adjust until something inside says yes. This practice, done with full attention, engages more than your brain. It engages your heart rate, your vagus nerve, your breathing rhythm. In a study conducted at Harvard's Benson Henry Institute, patients who practiced intentional repetition with emotional presence showed measurable reductions in blood pressure and cortisol levels after just 2 weeks. This is not abstract philosophy. This is physiology. Your words, when felt deeply, become signals to your nervous system. They are not just tools of hope, they are instruments of change. So I invite you to practice tonight, not like a task to complete, but a reality to embody. Sit down, breathe, and speak. 100 times. But not 100 empty echoes. 100 living declarations. Let your phrase become a drumbeat inside your chest. And by the time you reach the final repetition, you won't just be saying the words, you'll feel as if you have entered them. That is when the shift begins. Not from outside, but from within. There is a quiet and powerful shift that occurs around the midpoint of this practice. Somewhere between your 50th and 70th repetition, a strange silence begins to emerge within you. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of alignment, of something once distant beginning to feel familiar. Neuroscientists might call this the attenuation of the default mode network, the region of the brain responsible for self-referencing and doubt. Philosophers might call it the loosening of the ego's grip. Either way, what you are experiencing is the fading of the questioning voice and the rising of the knowing one. Your conscious mind, which has for so long served as the gatekeeper of logic and habit, starts to step aside. And when it does, your subconscious, the realm Neville Goddard described as the creative power of the universe, steps forward, ready to imprint a new design. This is not imagination. It is not placebo. It is a biological and psychological threshold backed by the mechanics of neural plasticity. According to research from the Max Planck Institute for Human Development, repetition with emotional engagement leads to sustained changes in neural pathways, particularly in the areas associated with self-concept and expectation. What this means is that around the time your mind begins to wander or doubt, you are actually approaching the doorway of integration. This is the moment to lean in, not step back. And this is where many people abandon the work, mistaking discomfort for disproof. But I assure you, discomfort is not the enemy. It is the sign that something is loosening. The old structure is cracking, and the new one is waiting to take form. Let me give you an image to anchor this. Think of a sculptor working with marble. The first few strikes of the chisel do not reveal anything beautiful. In fact, they seem to mar the surface, to make things worse. But the sculptor does not stop. He knows that with each deliberate strike, the form buried within the stone is being revealed. You are that sculptor. Your phrase is the chisel. and your subconscious is the marble solid, ancient, and ready to become something new if only you persist through the rough and formless beginning. By the time you reach the 90th repetition, you may begin to feel a strange lightness, as if the words are no longer coming from you but through you. This is the moment when belief becomes embodiment. Your nervous system, through sheer consistency, begins to reclassify the repeated phrase as truth. And when the body believes, the world responds. In practical terms, this has been observed in clinical settings across behavioral science. Patients with chronic illness who engaged in daily affirmational practices with consistent timing and intensity showed improved immune function, as recorded in journals like Psychosomatic Medicine. This is not magic, it is coherence. The internal world becomes so saturated with a particular signal that it begins to regulate systems that had been out of sync. Heart rate stabilizes, sleep deepens, pain diminishes. These are not theories, these are outcomes. So if tonight, as you repeat your phrase, your mind starts to wander or doubt creeps in, take a deep breath and return. Know that you are not failing. You are nearing the most critical point in the process. Speak slower. Speak with your hand on your heart if it helps. Look in the mirror if it grounds you. Let your body know that you are safe to believe something new. Remember, the purpose is not to convince your logical mind, but to saturate your deeper awareness. You are building a bridge between the seen and unseen, and every repetition is a brick laid with intention. Do not stop when it feels dull. That is the moment just before the fire catches. That is the edge of transformation. And if you keep going, you will find something quietly miraculous. The words no longer sound like hope. They sound like home. Consistency, not intensity, is what redefines the architecture of the self. One powerful repetition may spark inspiration, but it is the steady rhythm over time that shapes identity and behavior. This is why Neville Goddard urged practice not just for a day or two, but for at least 7 nights. He understood, long before neuropsychology caught up, that the subconscious does not respond to isolated effort. It responds to sustained presence. This is echoed in the field of behavioral neuroscience, where the concept of long-term potentiation reveals that it is not the singular electrical impulse that strengthens a neural connection, but its repetition across time. In layman's terms, it is not what you do once that changes you, but what you repeat with feeling across a consistent duration. In fact, research published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience shows that daily affirmational practice over just 1 week begins to activate the brain's reward circuitry and default mode network, both responsible for self-relevance and internal narrative. What this means is that the brain itself begins to adapt to the new internal language, treating it as emotionally significant and therefore deserving of attention and integration. Let us return to imagery, which speaks where logic ends. Imagine your mind as a garden. The phrase you speak each night is a seed. If you plant the seed one day and leave it for 6, nothing grows. But plant it every evening with care, water it with emotion, and it begins to take root below the surface long before any green appears. The 7-night ritual is not about superstition. It is about biology. Sleep itself plays a crucial role in memory consolidation and emotional processing. The hippocampus and amygdala, 2 key structures involved in memory and emotion, become especially active during REM cycles. What you impress upon the mind before sleep is not forgotten. It is organized. It is filed. It is rehearsed in dreams and encoded into long-term frameworks of identity. This is why evening repetition is so powerful. You are not just speaking to your conscious mind. You are giving instructions to the deepest parts of yourself, and they are listening. For those of us beyond 65, routine often becomes our rhythm. So why not infuse that rhythm with meaning? You already have the time. You already understand the sacredness of the evening hour. Let it become a ceremony, simple but sacred. Find a quiet space. Turn off the television. Dim the lights. Sit in stillness and say the words that carry your chosen future. Do it with reverence. Let the phrase become the final message your brain receives before rest. And do it again tomorrow. Then again the next day. Think of these 7 nights as 7 strokes of the sculptor's hand. Each one doesn't reveal the masterpiece, but taken together, they begin to show shape. You may not notice the change on night 2 or night 4, but by night 7, something within will begin to feel more natural, more true. What once felt like hope now feels like foundation. Clinical psychologists working with elderly patients often use this very principle in cognitive reframing therapy, helping individuals replace long-standing self-limiting beliefs with affirmations repeated nightly. The results are measurable: reduced anxiety, improved sleep, even elevated immune responses. This is not philosophy alone. It is evidence. Your words, given rhythm and repetition, become medicine for the soul and body alike. So let this be your invitation. Begin tonight. Choose your phrase and speak it into the silence. Do it for 7 nights without expectation, only devotion. Treat it like lighting a candle in the dark, not to chase away the shadows, but to remember the light has always been inside you. Let this ritual become the soil from which a new reality rises. There comes a moment, after the final repetition has been spoken and the last breath has softened into quiet, when the most powerful action is to do nothing at all. This may sound paradoxical, especially in a culture that prizes doing over being, but it is precisely in this stillness that transformation ripens. Letting go is not surrender in the sense of defeat, but surrender in the sense of trust. In philosophical terms, it is the acceptance of the unseen as real. In scientific terms, it is the transition from active engagement to passive consolidation, a process governed by the brain's default mode network, which becomes most active during periods of rest and introspection. Studies from institutions such as the National Institute of Mental Health show that when the brain is not focused on an external task, it engages in self-reflection, memory consolidation, and internal simulation. This means that after you've completed your 100 repetitions, walking away in faith rather than control allows the subconscious to internalize your new belief without interference. The farmer does not dig up the seed each morning to see if it is growing. He waters it, then he walks away. Letting go is the final act of creation. Neville Goddard taught that faith is loyalty to the unseen reality, and this aligns perfectly with what quantum physics now suggests. Observation influences outcome, but so does non-attachment. The double-slit experiment, one of the most famous in quantum mechanics, reveals that particles behave differently when watched than when left alone. Likewise, your desire once imagined, spoken, and felt must now be released, not because it no longer matters, but because its unfolding requires space. Holding on too tightly signals to the mind that the outcome is still uncertain. Releasing it declares that it is done. This is not wishful thinking. It is neurological priming. In psychology, this is known as expectancy theory. What you expect with certainty, your brain begins to filter for and organize around. The reticular activating system, a network in the brainstem, literally tunes your perception to match your beliefs. But this system cannot operate efficiently under anxiety or hypervigilance. Calm expectation is the fertile ground in which manifestation grows. So what does this look like in practice? After you complete your repetitions each night, do not check for results in the mirror of your life. Instead, go for a walk, make a cup of tea, read a passage of something beautiful. Trust that the work is already happening inside the soil of your being. Treat the desire as already fulfilled, not by pretending or hoping, but by living with the quiet confidence of one who has already arrived. This is what philosophers have called the sacred detachment. In Buddhism, it is non-clinging. In Stoicism, it is the art of focusing on what is within your control and releasing what is not. And in practical neuroscience, it is the mental state that allows the prefrontal cortex to disengage and the deeper systems of integration to do their work. Tonight, when you reach the 100th repetition, do not strive to do more. Do not analyze whether it felt perfect. Simply finish with dignity and step back into life as if the world has already received your command. The seed has been planted. The subconscious has been impressed. Now you must let the invisible forces go to work. You are not abandoning the process. You are honoring it. This is how real change enters, not with thunder, but with trust. And if you feel the need to do something, let it be joy. Let it be gratitude. Let it be a gentle smile as you turn off the light and whisper not one more request, but one quiet truth. It is done. Now, I invite you to take this journey seriously. Begin tonight. Speak your phrase 100 times with feeling, for 7 nights without fail, and then release it completely. Let your actions afterward reflect the certainty of one who no longer begs, but expects. And if you are ready to commit not just in word but in spirit, say it aloud now. I am ready. Because this is more than practice. This is the beginning of a new life lived from within.